I'm going to start with 7 new poems that have not been published anywhere, and then read a few old favorites, and I might smuggle in 1 or 2 mystery guests, so we'll just see how that goes. So I'm going to start with a very short poem. It's called, and the first 7 are unpublished, brand new to the world. This is called Empty Light. Light is empty until the hummingbird crosses its path. You can sit down, there's probably a chair or 2 right there. Or we can drag more out of the back room.
There's chairs. There's a chair there, there's one there. If you want to sit next to each other, we can accommodate that.
Sorry.
No problem. The second one is called Nature Mother. You live a life so transparent, no shadow is cast behind you. You call upon the rainbow and the rainbow comes. An arpeggio of hues, blood reds and sundown blues, shining in and through you. As you walk in quiet days, your peaceful watching ways, the trees alert behind their veil of leaves reveal your face among their branches. And when you speak aloud comes the gentle rain of spring, shaken silver from the clouds, with your words a tender ring to enclose the pebbled sound of the freshet rising near, where we always hope to hear a little more from you, through you, of you. But this one is a little darker. Come on in, a couple seats over here, one over there. Welcome, welcome. This one is a little darker than those. It's called The Fire Prince. Tear down the sweet grapes, crush them as you will. Your wine is ever sour, your vine grows fresh pain. The words I shared with you, salt on my bleeding hands, dust that you whispered aside, gentle as a Buddhist master. My asp-fanged hands, raised in supplication, fill anew with envy from the well of sand. Your fire used the air entire, my scarlet dream prince. Your orchestra of light, your choir left the silent dark complete. Prince of the emerald wood, I await your return. Forever I wait in the snows, in the roiling icy clouds. I wait with love of such power that when I bear it before me, mountains bow at my passage. Another short little piece called The Energy of Love. Love is a violation of the law of conservation of energy. It comes from nothing, consists of nothing, and affects everything. Back to something a little darker. Now, this is called The Dark Plateau. When we awaken on the dark plateau, we must turn, step, and begin the walk. Though each step is heavy and at first encumbers the ground with its sad eternities, each step is lighter than that preceding, lighter like the horizon, growing at first mere gray above the blackness, before the first thread of gold streaks from the edge of hope. The last of the totally new ones is called Lament for an Irish Lad. And it is related to an actual person, but a person that I never met. Where are you now, Ciaran O'Kelly? You who departed last night with the swans had arrived on their backs in the dawn of the world, for there are some portals to other dimensions known just to the Irish, and there to so few. Yet the mist of your passing blew soft from my eyes, for tonight it was I all alone who departed, leaving behind both the sunrise and you. I'm now going to move on to some poems that appeared in my 3 collections that are sitting back there available for a low, low price. I do encourage you to buy lots of them. And the first one, the most recent book is called In the Time of the Queen, which came out 5 years ago. And the first couple of these are from that collection. This one's called Lichen Voices. That's Lichen. I can't quite hear the lichens in their voice of trembling green. On rocks and spring-damp limbs, they rest observed, but rarely seen. And now I'm going to do something that I always do at my readings. I am going to cheat. I'm going to read 2 poems by the great Australian-American poet Ernest G. Mall, who taught at the University of Oregon for 40-odd years. My friend Hope and I have just finished the collected poems of Ernest G. Mall, which is gigantic, and I have no idea what we're going to do with it, but we're going to do something with it, and it will become available eventually. Tremendous poet. And these are both about lichens, so that's what they're doing in here. So the first of these is from his Crater Lake collection. It's called Rock Lichens. So life is born even from that which dies, and be this love or stern inhuman strife, from this embrace in after days will rise moss, fern, and tree, the cool green brood of life. The second one is called A Reading of Earth. Jerry Mall lived to be 97 years old, and he was still writing fine poetry up till 2-3 days before he died. The last ones transcribed by his daughter Carolyn, with whom I corresponded quite a bit as we were working on the collection. It's pretty amazing what this man could do. At the age of 97, what I have never been able to do and never will be able to do. He's just so good. And this is called A Reading of Earth, and was written when he was about 81. I chipped some lichen from a crumbling cliff for an old man to study at his leisure. His hand will clutch his magnifying glass, his heart leap up to meet the promised pleasure. His ruse to trick the hunter closing in, not as men play at dominoes or cards, nor as they fashion epics hoped to be their monuments when empires fall to shards, but from his omega of days to read life's alpha etched in living hues on stone. What matter then what talon-fingered shadow loom up behind him where he sits alone? So, Jerry Mall. And with luck, the book will be available in a year or so. Going back to the In the Time of the Queen collection, how many of you have read any Lorca? Somebody? A fair number of you have. Federico Garcia Lorca was murdered in the early days of the Spanish Civil War in 1936, and he predicted that his body would walk away. And it's never been found to this day. It's still nominally sought by various entities, often against the wishes of the family. And this poem is called A Note from Lorca, 1968. And again, it's from In the Time of the Queen. They lied and lied today by gaping trees where they thought to lose me always, they are lost. Their thoughts are wingless birds. They peck for me in rodent dust in gunwoods of old Spain. They prowl for me, their silent faces smooth, for they lost their eyes that day when lies began. They search as sea apes, tree fish scan for me. They crack open social stones for my crystal shape. They pry up roofs for my naked form, for I walked away as the women knew I could. But Spain knows nothing now. It knew less than nothing then. those maggots of the death regime, for I rose above their God, I rose, rising and leaving the where at which they claimed my death, where indeed they clank in vain, foiled shovels scrape stony Spain, the shame-nosed rabbits, nameless rabbits pawing panting hills in pain. They knew no words, so when they tried to speak my death, the sound became a breeze from oaks. The red-wined air blew their leaden grunts aside. I stepped upon the wind-built stair. I climbed it, weightless, winding ever beyond, alive above the devil's dust of ancient Spain. This next one, some years ago I was traveling through Newport on the coast, and there's a shop there that sells all kinds of things that blow in the wind. And it, balloons and flags and things like that. And they had a big sign that said fairy wings for sale. And as a gay person, I said, okay. I'm provided, I'm fine. I'd like to dedicate particularly in today's climate, this little reading to my transsexual and transgender friends and family members around the state and the country. Fairy wings for sale, the beachside shop regaled, passers-by who glanced, chanced an airy thought, are these wings transformative? Uplifting in a glassy trace of wind, that vivid translucency behind which identity pooled and flowed, all fairies stretch and dry their transparent wings, preparing for that first transaggressive flight. I'm going to read something from my very first collection, something I wrote, 20 years ago. It's from the little black collection called Night Crossing. The Grim Reaper is a familiar image, and this poem assumes that there's a sort of guild of reapers. There's a bunch of them, and they go out and do this thing, and after a day's hard work, they get together at the bar. Well, why not? And the bar is called the Jolly Reaper. It's great when my brother laughs. I think I've accomplished something there. But this is called Tales from the Jolly Reaper from Night Crossing. The reapers leaned back at their table of choice, sharing work stories, their cloaks all undone. Gloria gestured, considered aloud the rapist's last struggle, that he, hooked by time, gasped his last vision of her cloak and sighed. Melissa, submerged in the maritime beat, noted the drowning sailor's shocked gaze, for mermaids were real, but who could he tell? Janet, whose time in the service was long, smiled over her flock and shared a brief tale of the joy, unexpected, of a weary shoe stitcher, saved from her life by the kiss of a blade. Wanda, the newest, tried hard not to brag, but lost that short fight under tolerant eyes, so mentioned her startling coup for a youth, and set forth her arrival in dark private rooms of the bishop, who, falling short of his goal, had lavished a boy with red silk and cap, a vision unseen quite so near to God since Ganymede's day or Cavafy's best dreams. Helga retired these 9 quiet years, bought around for the crew. Their blades clanged together, a sermon of joy. With a hitching of ropes and a clatter of poles, the next shift came in, consecrated afresh. One night at the Jolly Reaper. I'm going to read 3 poems about music, and then I'll close out with another short piece. Have any of you ever heard the University of Oregon Men's a cappella group On the Rocks?
Yes.
I'm seeing, they have, okay. The women's group is the VC, which is also just tremendous group. About maybe 18 years ago, when I was watching and listening to On the Rocks on a regular basis, I wrote a poem about them, and I'm still in touch with a couple of the people who were singing then. And I was going to call this poem Knights of Orion. And then I discovered that there really is a musical group called Knights of Orion in Nebraska. So I couldn't use that. So this is just called On the Rocks. And reading this out loud is always, I always have to take a deep breath because it's kind of like riding a horse that gets out of control. And it just, you'll see. So this is called On the Rocks, and it's also from Night Crossing, over there, the little black book. And there's actually a picture of them from that year on the back of the book. The 9 nights of midnight went by us tonight, rode in on meteors, trailing a glow as they crossed the high pass, leaving indigo snow, escorting Orion right down from the sky. Their golden glissando stirred us from sleep, as from subsurface caverns a river burst forth, saluting the riders with unbridled force, with pillars of azure, pure magnetized light, reflected in prisms of diamond-cut ice. The joy of their passage made waterfalls cry. We gathered nearby on the shuddering ridge, heard the cedars step back with a great sigh of stone, as 9 ebony steeds, newly wreathed in fresh stars, rode down the stunned mountain with blazing red manes, their cinnamon wake blast a full mile wide. The riders came on, too bright for the eye. Rejoicing, they unstopped celestial pipes. Their rainbow aurora rang out to the peaks as a peal of white horns between torchlight and steam called out to the earth for its blessing. And then, from the well of creation, the voice of the deep, the long bronze sub-echo of harmonic time, boomed down the canyon of oncoming day, bringing the dream fall, a glitter of bells, to welcome the riders and offer fair winds. The air tart with ozone, they thundered on past, leaving us sleepless with wonder and awe. For at dawn they set sail for the 900 isles, escorting their prince to a new hunting ground, where the cold, barren dust will ignite at the sound. I don't know what it is about that one. It's a very hard poem to read slowly. It just wants to go faster and faster. So, have any of you heard Pink Martini?
Sure.
Okay, bunch. Have any of you heard their Bolero? You can hardly have heard Pink Martini and not heard Bolero at some point. So, not long after I first heard that, I wrote a poem about what it sounded like, my reaction to it. Quite an amazing arrangement. And this is just called On Hearing Pink Martini's Bolero. And it's in one of these collections, I can't remember which one. What is this pulsing sound, white gold in spiral frenzy? Opalescent wings flash out from butterflies of silver that know the long-lost dances. Diamond-set cadenzas in fiery rings surge upward to a lapis sky that sings. Like orioles in April, they lift on thrumming wings, surf waves of auburn sound up the latitudes of love. The trees of Chimborazo awake to sparkling tickles as emeralds filled with longing swirl skyward past the cirrus, through the secret gates of heaven, where they find the one they came for at last to end his slumber with a coruscating light. Ravel awakes bolt upright. He knows the sound at once, no labored replication, and the stars themselves take flight. And the last of the music poems is based on Howard Shore's music from The Lord of the Rings. And I say based on, when Howard Shore came to Seattle to conduct his 2-hour Lord of the Rings symphony, maybe 10 years, 12 years ago, I went and I took with me my friend Eric West, who is an artist, and I had commissioned him to do a painting based not on the movie but on the music, which he did, and it was quite amazing when he was finally done, because he had taken dozens upon dozens of small bits of gold foil and had cut them into the shape of musical notes and had shone lights on them from different angles to see how they ought to look as they went like this over a painting that's about 3 by 4 feet. And I happened to be there when he was working on it, and I went into his studio, and there's like a million of these little gold foil notes. But the final result is, when you look at the painting, those notes are correct. They are playable. They actually are a piece of the music that you would recognize if you played it. Quite remarkable, an amazing artist from Eugene. And this poem is called Firewand, and it's the title poem from the collection called Firewand that's available over there for a low price. Songwind born in stars, endless golden spiral from ancient furnace deeps, relentless, burning coral. Notes incised through dusk, each edged in frozen flames, chipped rainbows from the sky, reforging them as names. Blazing iris flowered, unsheathed its primal glow, unknown scintillations, spectra, heretofore unknown. A rushing breath of silence frosted the cold ring, exhaling ghastly riders astride foul leathern wings. Brazen portals glimmered, unleashed their lance of song, aureolan escort for a tempered iron throng. Bold blustering of horns burst on the sanguine stone, brought argent riders steeled down the edge of crumbled hope. Scything bows of chaos resolve in measured joy, throw back the noontide dusk as misty swords deploy. Except in dreams no sound to equal scarlet thunder, except in dreams no firewand to crack black stone asunder. How to paint this soundstorm, how to classify the dawn. It is enough that I lived through it. It is enough that I lived on. I'm going to close with a short poem also from Firewand. Many of you will remember that over the last 10 years or so, there's been a lot of talk about whether the ivory-billed woodpecker still exists. People have been, I know people who were part of the teams who were looking. I know one of the people who made one of the sightings that people were following up on. And in at least one case, I know him too well. And it was a strange thing to watch. All these people doing what needed to be done and putting their hearts into it. And eventually concluding that at best they could not prove the existence of any more ivory-billed woodpeckers either here or in Cuba. Cuba's the last place they were found, Rich? I think that's right. So kind of toward the end of that process, when it was moving along still, I wrote this poem, and it's just called Ivory Bill. In light's final hour, I went for a walk in primeval forest today, a stroll I had made many times, watching for mythical wings. For 3 seconds near dusk, in a glade found in time, I saw into the umbra where life breathes anew, and thought I saw Lincoln pass by. Thank you.